Have you ever heard of a soldier who was considered useless by his own comrades until one day he single-handedly captured 63 enemy soldiers? What would you think of a man whose abilities were completely underestimated, but who turned out to be the most lethal weapon in the battlefield? At first glance, this man seemed to have no special talents. His fellow soldiers doubted his usefulness, and his officers had little faith in his combat capabilities. He wasn't a seasoned veteran, nor did he have any remarkable reputation. In fact, the army had written him off. But history would soon reveal that this soldier, once considered weak, would rise to become a symbol of bravery, skill, and raw determination. This story isn't one of glory handed out by Fatits about a soldier who changed the course of a battle and how he used his so-called useless skills to strike fear into the hearts of his enemies. How did this unlikely hero manage to capture 63 enemy combatants while the seasoned warriors around him struggled to hold their ground? The answer might surprise you. You see, it wasn't brute strength that led to his success. It was his sheer willpower, his quiet strategy, and his ability to outthink the opposition. His story is one of defying expectations and proving that sometimes the biggest victories come from those who are overlooked. He turned what seemed like a disadvantage into his greatest asset, proving that anyone, regardless of their background, can make a massive impact in a moment of crisis. But how did this soldier accomplish what seemed impossible? What did he do in that fateful battle that made him the one man capable of achieving the unthinkable? This is where the story begins. After all, the greatest tales of heroism often come from the most unexpected places. Are you ready to discover how an underestimated soldier became the ultimate weapon on the battlefield? Let's dive into this remarkable story and uncover how this seemingly useless man captured 63 enemies alone. It wasn't until the battlefield was filled with the chaos of war that this soldier began to show his true potential. At first, he was dismissed as someone who didn't fit the ideal image of a military hero. He wasn't tall, he didn't have the physique of a seasoned fighter, and he didn't have the reputation that many of the other soldiers had earned through years of service. In fact, most of his comrades thought he'd be the first to be taken down in any confrontation. His name? Not one that would stir up memories of legendary warriors. His background wasn't glamorous. Either born into a humble family, far from the training academies and elite military circles. He wasn't raised with expectations of greatness, and to be honest, neither was he. But in the fog of war, everything changed. You see, unlike many soldiers who relied on their brute strength or their training, this man had a keen mind, something that the higher-ups had failed to see. They looked at his size, his demeanor, and his perceived lack of physicality, and they judged him as unfit for the grueling battles they were about to face. Little did they know it wasn't his physical strength that would set him apart. It was his mind and an iron will to succeed, no matter the odds. In battle, everything changed. He quickly proved that he wasn't there by mistake. In fact, in the midst of a chaotic, blood-soaked battlefield, this soldier's ability to think critically and act swiftly became invaluable. His comrades started to notice. The timid, quiet soldier who had once been a joke began to show the kind of resilience and intelligence that turned the tide of battle. The first time he was thrust into combat, his leadership gave him a simple task, one that seemed far beneath his capabilities, while others in his unit were sent on missions with heavier responsibilities. This soldier was asked to stay behind with a small team and scout an area. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't important. At least, that's what he was led to believe. However, What seemed like an insignificant task became the first test that would reveal his hidden genius. As his comrades prepared for what seemed like a routine operation, the enemy forces sprung an ambush, a well-organized attack that caught the more experienced soldiers off guard. Chaos erupted, but this soldier didn't panic. He didn't freeze. He thought quickly, analyzed the situation, and began coordinating a defense that would save his comrades from complete destruction. What started as a small scouting mission became a turning point. Under his guidance, they managed to outwit the enemy, and when it was all over, they had not only survived but secured a critical advantage. His superior officers, who had once written him off, began to see something they hadn't noticed before. It wasn't about brute strength, it was about adaptability, intelligence, and the ability to remain calm under fire. But this was only the beginning. As the war continued, this soldier's reputation slowly but surely began to shift. From the moment of the ambush, his instincts had been clear. He was a natural problem solver. But it wasn't until one pivotal day that he truly became the hero that no one had expected. It started like any other day. The sun rose over the battlefield, casting long shadows over the war-torn landscape. But this day would be different. His platoon was about to face a battalion of enemy soldiers, far outnumbered, with no hope of reinforcements. The plan was to hold the line, buy time, and hopefully escape with their lives. It was a mission most considered a suicide run, yet the soldier saw something different. Where others saw overwhelming odds, he saw opportunity. He understood the layout of the terrain, the weaknesses in the enemy's strategy, and most importantly, he knew how to turn the tables. His mind raced as he quickly put a plan into motion, one that would use the very terrain the enemy thought was in their favor to his advantage. While the rest of his unit took defensive positions, he split off from the group. His fellow soldiers didn't understand at first. What could one man do against an entire battalion? But he wasn't going to wait to be caught off guard like the others. He moved swiftly, using the environment to hide his every step, waiting for the right moment to strike. Then the unthinkable happened. One by one, he began to take prisoners, dozens of them. His strategy was simple: move fast, strike hard, and never give the enemy time to regroup. His knowledge of the terrain allowed him to outmaneuver them, catching enemy soldiers off guard, forcing them to surrender without a fight. His fearlessness and ingenuity were on full display as he captured one enemy after another, chaining them together and leading them back to his platoon, who watched in awe as their once useless comrade returned with 63 prisoners. The entire battlefield seemed to pause. How could one man have done what a platoon couldn't? It wasn't just the fact that he captured so many. No, it was the audacity of the act. At a moment when escape seemed impossible, he had turned the situation on its head, using nothing but his sharp mind, his keen sense of timing, and his absolute refusal to back down. His actions would go down in military history as a prime example of unconventional warfare, of one man defying the odds and turning a seemingly doomed situation into an overwhelming victory. But the truth is, this moment didn't just change the course of that battle. It changed everything about how the army saw this soldier. The label of useless quickly faded, replaced by admiration and respect. Those who once doubted him now looked at him as a leader, someone who, when faced with the impossible, found a way to make the impossible happen. After that incredible feat, everything about this soldier's reputation changed. The man who had once been deemed unfit for battle was now regarded as an indispensable asset, a symbol of resilience and ingenuity under pressure. But his story didn't end There it was just the beginning of an even greater transformation. The war was still raging, and with every passing day, the stakes grew higher. The pressure on the soldiers was unrelenting, with countless lives at risk. But this soldier, who had so far defied the odds, wasn't about to rest on his laurels. He knew that, in war, glory was fleeting. What mattered was the ability to adapt, to survive, and to keep fighting when everyone else had given up. Word of his success spread quickly through the ranks. His unit, once skeptical of his abilities, now saw him in a different light. But even more impressive was the way he inspired those around him. His fellow soldiers, many of whom had seen the horrors of battle firsthand, found themselves motivated by his actions. He had shown them that even when victory seemed impossible, there was always a way if they just had the courage to take it. As his reputation grew, he was entrusted with more and more critical missions. The once overlooked soldier had become a key player in the unfolding drama of war. His tactics, honed in the heat of battle, became a template for success. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore, he was fighting to win, and his mind was the sharpest weapon in his arsenal. But this newfound respect didn't come without its challenges. As he rose through the ranks, he found himself facing even more difficult choices. In some situations, his decisions saved lives. In others, they put everything at risk. But he never backed down. For him, it was never about personal glory. It was about doing what was necessary to achieve victory, no matter the cost. In one particularly harrowing encounter, he and his squad were ambushed while attempting to secure a strategic position. Surrounded on all sides by enemy forces, his unit was about to be wiped out, but instead of panicking, he took charge. He directed his men with precision, using his tactical knowledge to create an escape route they never thought possible. His quick thinking saved them from certain death. And once again, he proved that his value was not in his strength, but in his mind. The battles kept coming, each one harder than the last. Yet, with every victory, his reputation as a soldier grew, and so did the weight of the expectations placed on him. He had become more than just a soldier. He had become a symbol of hope, an embodiment of the idea that anything was possible with enough willpower. His name was now etched into the history of the war. But even as he stood on the front lines, hailed as a hero by those who had once written him off, he remained humble. He understood that his success was not just the result of his own efforts, but the collective strength of those around him. Without his comrades, he knew none of this would have been possible. But the question remained: how long could he keep defying the odds? Would his luck hold out, or would this unstoppable force finally meet its match? As the war drew to a close, this soldier's legacy was sealed. He had proven time and time again that the greatest strength didn't lie in physical prowess or raw power. It resided in the ability to think under pressure, to outsmart the enemy, and to find solutions where others saw only obstacles. His name became synonymous with courage and ingenuity, and his actions were studied by military leaders for years to come. But even as the war ended and the world began to rebuild, the true impact of his actions didn't fade. Soldiers who had fought beside him carried his story with them for the rest of their lives, passing it down to the next generation. The soldier who had once been considered useless had become a symbol of what was possible in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. For many, his story was more than just a war. Talit was a reminder that anyone, no matter their background or the expectations placed upon them, could achieve greatness. It was a story of redemption, of rising from the shadows of doubt and emerging as a hero when it mattered most. And it was a testament to the idea that sometimes the most important battles are the ones fought not with weapons, but with the mind. Years after the war ended, veterans would sit in quiet conversations, reminiscing about the battles they fought, and the man who had captured 63 prisoners alone. Some would even say that his actions had been the turning point in the war, that if not for his ingenuity and fearlessness, victory might have been delayed. Of course, no one could say for certain, but there was no doubt in anyone's mind that this soldier had changed the course of history. But what was it about him that made him so special? Was it his uncanny ability to read the battlefield, his quick thinking, or his unshakable resolve? Or was it something deeper, something that no one could quite put their finger on? Perhaps it was the fact that he never saw himself as a hero. He wasn't fighting for glory or recognition. He was fighting because it was what needed to be done. In the years following the war, when his name was mentioned in the media, it was often followed by the word legend. And though he was lauded by those who knew him, he remained a humble man, always deflecting the praise and focusing instead on the men who had fought beside him. To him, it was never about being remembered, it was about doing his job, doing it well, and making sure that his comrades came home safely. As Timmy went on, his story became one that was passed down, not only in military circles, but in classrooms, in books, and in documentaries. He became an inspiration to countless individual soldiers and civilians, alike showing them that no matter how small, how unassuming, or how overlooked one might be, everyone had the potential to make a difference. But even as his story reached the ears of millions, the soldier himself never sought the spotlight. He didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than words ever could. His legacy lives on, not just in the history books, but in the hearts of those who knew him, and in the stories told about him long after he was gone. As we reflect on the life and legacy of this remarkable soldier, we are reminded of one fundamental truth. Sometimes the most unlikely heroes are the ones who make the greatest impact. His story is a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of thinking outside the box, and the ability to rise above adversity when all seems lost. His actions didn't just change the course of a battle, they changed the way we view heroism and bravery. So, what can we take away from this story? It's clear that no matter the odds, no matter the doubts of others, every individual has the potential to make a difference. This soldier's transformation from useless to unstoppable is a powerful reminder that greatness doesn't always come in the form we expect. Sometimes it's hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Now, let me ask you, what did you find most surprising about this soldier's journey? Was it the way he turned a hopeless situation into a triumph? Or how he proved that sometimes the greatest strength lies in the mind and not the body? We'd love to hear your thoughts. And while you're at it, if you found this story as compelling as we did, don't forget to like this video. Your support helps us continue bringing you incredible untold stories from the past. If you're new here, subscribe to our channel for more content like this, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an inspiring story. What do you think? Do you believe there are other heroes in history who've been underestimated, just like this soldier? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, your thoughts matter to us. They help us shape the content that you want to see. As the years passed and the soldier's name became legendary, the full extent of his impact on the battlefield and in military history began to crystallize. What many didn't realize, however, was the subtle ripple effect his actions had on the strategies that followed. His story wasn't just one of personal glory, it was a blueprint for future generations of soldiers, commanders, and tacticians. He had rewritten the manual on what it meant to be a true warrior. Despite the accolades, the soldier was often reluctant to speak of his accomplishments. He didn't want medals. He didn't crave fame. What mattered to him was the job at hand, the sense of duty, the need to do what was right for his comrades and his country. In the quiet moments, when the noise of the war had faded, he found comfort not in applause, but in the camaraderie of those who had fought beside him. But as time went on, his story couldn't be contained within the walls of military barracks or quiet conversations among veterans. His heroism transcended the boundaries of the battlefield. It became a symbol of hope for the broken, for those who felt as though they had no place in the world. His story was shared in schools, in military academies, and in every corner where the undying spirit of perseverance was needed. Yet, what is most striking about this soldier's legacy is that even as others hailed his incredible feats, he remained humble, almost reserved. He never sought recognition. The soldier who had captured 63 prisoners alone, who had turned the tide of battle, didn't want to be remembered for his actions. He simply wanted to have done his part, nothing more, nothing less. While the world continued to change, the lessons he imparted remained timeless. Sometimes, victory doesn't come from sheer power or strength, but from intelligence, strategy, and the ability to adapt under pressure. His quiet genius in battle, his ability to outthink the enemy and execute plans no one else saw, would influence generations of soldiers long after he'd left the front lines. In the years following the war, many of his peers would recount the events of that fateful day. They spoke not just of the number of prisoners he had captured, but of the bravery, foresight, and mental agility he had shown in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. They would tell their children and grandchildren about how one seemingly useless soldier had taught them all the true meaning of courage. And still, this hero's greatest legacy wasn't found in his accolades or his victory. It was found in the simple truth that, when faced with the most daunting of challenges, one man had the power to change the course of history and prove that anything was possible. As the years wore on, this soldier's name became synonymous with legendary feats of heroism. But his legacy was not solely defined by his victories. It was also shaped by his final, most significant test, not on the battlefield, but in the quiet aftermath of the war. In the chaos of conflict, amid the bloodshed and destruction, it was easy to forget that heroes are also human. Soldiers, no matter how extraordinary, often face the emotional toll that war leaves behind. The true test of this soldier's character would come not in combat, but in his return to civilian life. After the war, like many of his fellow soldiers, he was given the chance to return home. But there was no fanfare, no grand homecoming. He didn't march into a ticker-tape parade. He simply walked back into the world, uncertain of where he belonged. The world had changed, and so had he. Despite the recognition he received from his peers, his sense of self was no longer tied to military ranks or medals. The quiet man who had once been dismissed as useless was now a hero. Yet, for him, the idea of being celebrated wasn't what mattered most. What lingered in his mind were the faces of those who had fought beside him, the lives lost in battle, and the memories that would never fade. This was the soldier's true strength, not the feats he had achieved, but the emotional resilience to face the horrors of war and the quiet humility with which he embraced his legacy. It was about understanding that the fight didn't end when the war did. The true battle lay in returning to a world that seemed disconnected from the chaos and camaraderie of the battlefield. For the soldier, the greatest victory was not in the number of prisoners captured or the battles won, but in finding peace within himself after everything he had witnessed, in learning how to live again, how to connect with others who had shared the same experience, and how to rebuild a life after the devastation of war. His story is a reminder that every hero, no matter how unassuming or unlikely, faces a battle beyond the battlefield, a personal journey of healing, of finding purpose, and of navigating a world that sometimes feels like it's forgotten the sacrifices made in the name of peace. The soldier's story didn't end with his return to civilian life. In fact, his legacy continued to grow, not just within military circles, but across generations. As time passed, the lessons he taught became even more relevant, particularly to those who faced challenges of their own. Whether in battle or in the personal struggles of daily life, he had been more than just a soldier. He was a living example of perseverance, adaptability, and the power of an unyielding mind. His legacy wasn't just about the 63 prisoners he captured alone. It was about the example he set for others, that one individual could make a difference, no matter how small or insignificant they might seem to the world around them. As the years went by, military schools and academies began studying his tactics. They looked at his ability to outsmart his enemies, his calm under pressure, and his innovative use of strategy. His story became a case study in unconventional warfare, in the kind of thinking that transcended traditional training and doctrine. It was about looking beyond the obvious, about finding solutions when everyone else was ready to give up. But even beyond military circles, the soldier's influence was felt. His journey of transformation from the useless man to the hero who changed the course of a battle became a symbol of hope. For anyone who had ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed, his life was a reminder that greatness often comes from unexpected places. It's not always about physical traits or skills that are immediately visible. It's about the unseen strength, intelligence, and willpower that can rise to the surface when the time is right. Across generations, parents would tell their children about the soldier who turned the impossible into reality. Teachers would use his story to inspire students to overcome their own challenges. And everywhere you looked, people who were once considered weak or incapable would draw strength from his example, showing the world that they too could change the course of their own lives. It was a legacy built not on fame, but on the quiet determination of one man who had been willing to stand up, even when no one else thought he could. His name lived on, not because of the battles he fought, but because of the hearts he touched and the minds he inspired. As we come to the end of this incredible story, we are reminded that true heroes aren't always the ones who seek recognition. They're the ones who rise to the occasion when the world needs them most, and then quietly return to their lives, knowing they've made a difference. This soldier, who once was called useless, is now remembered as one of the greatest examples of resilience, intelligence, and bravery. His legacy is not just found in the battlefield, but in every person who draws strength from his story. It's in the individuals who, when faced with their own impossible situations, choose to persevere. It's in the quiet moments when we remember that greatness can come from the most unexpected places, and that even the smallest action can change the world. But here's the real question. How many others like him are out there, waiting to show the world what he's capable of? Perhaps the true lesson from this soldier's story is that heroism is not something bestowed upon the few. It's something that anyone can embody in their own way, in their own time. Now, After hearing this soldier's incredible journey, think about your own life. When was the last time you felt underestimated or overlooked? What can you do to rise above it, to prove to yourself and to the world that you are capable of greatness, no matter how many doubt you? If this story inspired you in any way, take a moment to show your support. Leave a comment below. Tell us what part of this soldier's journey resonated with you the most. If you believe there's someone in your life who embodies the same resilience, let us know. And don't forget to hit the like button to help us spread these incredible stories far and wide. If you haven't yet, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on more stories of heroism, courage, and untold history. And if you've made it this far, you're already a part of this journey. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting these forgotten heroes. And thank you for keeping their legacies alive. As we sign off, remember, every story you share, every hero you acknowledge helps to write the next chapter of history. Keep these stories alive, and we'll see you in the next video.